All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Theory Forge, episode 31 here. Respect my community. We're going to be talking about MMO communities here. We got a couple of our regulars, of course, and joining us today is Valor. We've got your logo and things up there, and it's all pretty awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your group there?
All right. Yeah, my name is Valor. I'm with a guild called Lords of the Dead. They were founded in 1995. Yeah, we're about to hit 20 years this summer, actually. And the reason that I've kind of been tabbed to come on here is I've been doing a podcast called Crowns and Crows covering the upcoming MMO Crowfall. We started doing that during their Kickstarter, and we just completed episode 6. I just love talking MMOs, love talking Crowfall, and communities as well.
Very, very cool. Just real quick, so anybody who's tuning in gets an idea. Where do you actually broadcast the show? What's the channel, and where can they find you?
Oh yeah, easy. Twitch.tv/Crowns and Crows. We keep it pretty simple. And then if you just search us on YouTube, Crowns and Crows, we put all of our episodes up there. And then we even started putting up all of the post cast conversations that we take place, and sometimes those are even more entertaining than the show, sadly. But
Oh no, I know the feeling. We've had some of those happen here too, for sure.
yeah, so you can find us there anywhere on the Crowfall forums. I try to keep a pretty active presence online, so definitely.
Awesome.
It's an awesome show. We're very happy to have you come join us. Sog was going to be with us, but had an issue he had to take care of. So we hopefully will be able to fill in just fine. But a very good topic, I think, communities, especially centered towards Crowfall, because seeing the community develop or come together there has been an experience too. And you've been able to see that. I mean, firsthand. You have the podcast to watch for it. Starting with Kickstarter and everything sort of snowballing, they've had a lot of clout, a lot of positive community from what I can see.
Yeah, the community for the most part has been a lot more positive than I've seen in past games, where a lot of times it's due to lack of communication. And I've actually got to meet the dev team in person and talk to them, and they've been very open and willing to communicate with the community. And so we see them, on the forums a lot, and they're answering threads. They're doing a lot of stuff, and a lot of that was, leading up to Kickstarter and during the Kickstarter. So of course, they want to try and bring as many people in and be as open as they possibly could, because that allows the customers or the supporters to be able to form a more personal bond. And so by doing all of that, I think that they really set themselves up well. But they did just hire a new community manager, Pan from Eve. People know her, the best for her time with CCCP.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I was watching because they were on your show, answering questions. The way
Yeah.
we watched that. We all actually were in chat. You were probably too busy to notice. We were watching. A brilliant move, really. Well, we can get into that too, but even just being on a Kickstarter program, just the way they played that out, their interaction with community has been brilliant, really. It's curious to see how it goes forward. Now, we all know they're going to take a little bit of break from as much information as they had, but I think they played that brilliantly. I hope that continues, that kind of openness.
How has it been this last
that,
week? This last week, how has it been in terms of, because the Kickstarter ended last week, right?
Yeah, so since Kickstarter ended, they definitely dialed back the amount of information that they're putting out. I mean, the Kickstarter was out there to let people know what they're going to work on, and so post Kickstarter, well, they've already told us more or less as much as there is to know about the game, and the game's still under development. So with the game still being under development, as they continue to flesh out systems, well, then they'll be able to put that out. And I think that they're going to probably dial back to maybe once a week or once every other week news announcement, just depending on how much information there is. And For us, it was cool being able to get in there on the end, the end of the Kickstarter because, they started off with the AMA on Reddit, and then they went over to another podcast being done called Golden Glory, and then they went to ours, and I think they might have even ended up on Crowfall Radio. I'm not sure. I didn't get to catch that one, but the focus of our podcast has always been more PvP centric and the way different things influence PvP in games. And so for us to be able to sit there and pick their brains, I feel like what we were able to do is we were able to answer a lot of questions that people had, and they weren't getting those types of questions answered. And so I'd like to think that it helped out the Crowfall game, but in terms of the community moving forward, people are even this past week, there was 6 or 7 threads locked in the single day, and it was this big uproar because people are restless. There's not a lot of new information to talk about, and so now they just start bickering.
So that's actually one of the things that I think is really good for a game is when people have a lot of specific questions and they can get them answered, because it's kind of like the meta game of the community is theory crafting. So the more informed people are when they approach theory crafting, the better kind of an opinion they have of what a better idea rather of what the final product is going to be like, or at least the first kind of playable stages of it. And I'm not going to say that just from theory crafting and not having played the game yet, that the community is going to be able to influence significant change in the game or, significant decision-making sort of things. But it's the sort of thing that people will, come in with their theories and test them, and then based on how well they work or not, be able to report on that, and that will be able to turn into, very valid sorts of feedback. So it's a really nice thing when we get all of this information up front, or at least there's as much as that they're willing to talk about and explain, because it gives the community something to really chew on for a while. And yeah, it's definitely going to devolve into bickering here and there and various forum posts and stuff, but that's one of the other nice reasons for talk shows, is to have a lot more organized, thoughtful discussion on whatever's actually been presented, and be able to engage the community in a positive way, rather than it just almost becoming like another Reddit sort of issue where it's just everybody upvoting and downvoting things arbitrarily. And I'm sure anybody who's been on Reddit knows what I'm talking about. So go ahead.
And I can tell you on Twitter, I have several lists that I follow, and one of them is the entire dev team of Crowfall. And I think you're right. The information the last week has sort of trickled, and that's expected. They told us that would happen. I think the two most informative, non-informative tweets, there was one they put out, the April Fool's joke, and two, there was another one I think that was like animated GIFs of them following completion of, I don't know if anyone saw that, it was hilarious, but it's an interesting, because Valerie, you probably know, we started off with Landmark and Next, so we've sort of gone through this already once before, and it's curious to me seeing the comparisons. It's been very interesting, and in this setting, being more PvP based, the communities tend to be different. I'm just curious if I guess my first question they did such a great job. I really think, especially again with Kickstarter being a part of this, they did such a great job with everything you mentioned. They also did the Twitter Q&A that went on for like hours, which they were very much they responded to the whole time. I mean, they answered a few of my questions, but do you think that set them up for kind of a quick backlash with not being able to give as much information? Because my experience has been, even when there's a lack of information and they say there is a lack of information, people want information and they get really mad when it's not there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that for me, when they hired the new community manager, I did a lot of background research on her, because for me, communities are an essential part for an online game. If you have a healthy online presence, if your forums are well moderated, if you provide enough leeway for people to discuss what they want to discuss without being oppressive, you will have a healthy game. It's things that can really drive people away from a game are how you treat them on the forums. And for me, when they hired Pan as their new community manager, I wanted to see what direction are they going to go, what direction are they going to take this community. And she has a pretty impressive resume. And listening to some of her, she presented at GDC here in Austin a couple of years back. Listening to that and reading some of the other work that she's done, she takes a very professional approach, and I think that is an important approach to take whenever you're dealing with a PvP community, because PvPers do enjoy a lot of the antagonization. They like to try and bait people and find that weakness in the armor, and just get that emotional response, which you might not see as much in other communities. So, seeing all of that and seeing the direction that they wanted to go by hiring a community manager, I think that for me, my biggest fear was going to be, was all information now going to be funneled through her? Were we going to lose our interaction with the development team? Are they going to now go behind the curtain and, we just get to deal with Pan, who is a professional, and so she will filter information, and then that leaves us with that, that wanting of, oh man, I just miss when we got to talk with the devs. But I haven't seen it. She's been there. She's still kind of getting used to the operational tempo. But Todd, Gordon, Thomas, Tully, they've all been very interactive on the forums. Still, there's just less to talk about.
I could totally imagine that they would want to stay, on the pulse of the community, and it might be the sort of thing that, kind of like what was going on with maybe Landmark a little bit, where they would read a lot more than they would actually respond to. So they'd be aware of what's going on, but the replies would be few and far between. It was usually when there was a very specific technical question or something that was really well detailed and gets at a major issue, and was not necessarily that other things weren't worthy of a response, but is definitely something that really was something that if it wasn't replied to, it'd be an opportunity. It would be missing an opportunity, basically, to inform the community on something very, very critical. So I would imagine it's going to be that at some point, and some amount of that might be filtering through people who read the forums more regularly, and they say, hey, check out this post here. And, I would imagine a little bit of that is going to happen when more of the work starts, when more of the kind of the project really is in gear. Right now, I actually don't know how much in gear the project is. There's definitely work being done, but I don't know if it's, full steam ahead, or if everybody's still kind of getting their bearings and they're still doing a lot of meetings on design decisions and other sorts of things to make sure that everybody's on the same page. It's really, really hard to say from an outsider perspective at this point, but I guess the nice thing is these are things we can always ask about, and it sounds like we'll get an answer on.
Yeah, I think so. And from what I know from just watching Twitter and announcements, and they're bringing on a couple of people. If you go onto crowfall.com, you can see that there's a progress bar for bringing on a new design guy, I believe. They have a $150,000 goal, and once they get there, they'll bring on yet another person. And I know that Tully's being moved out of the community management role and only into the development role. So with I think they're doing a little bit of shuffling around. They're definitely trying to flesh out some of the systems that they are wanting to work on. I believe the announcement today said they were working on fleshing out one of the systems, and then I'd expect probably in the next couple of years next couple of months they're going to really start hitting the ground. I mean, they've got to get an engine, or the engine built, and something playable for pre-alpha, which I expect to be, in July-ish timeframe. And then Alpha 1, if they said Alpha 1 is in August or in the summer, so, we don't have a whole lot of months left. And I'd consider August probably a safe bet. it's at the end of the summer. So
Actually, everything that we've seen up to this point could have all been done in Voxel Farm editor, and maybe they don't even have the engine together at all, and it's just using the technology that already exists, and just like, all right, now let's put some characters in there, and call it a demo video.
oh my gosh. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know, I'm
I mean,
teasing.
because did you guys see
Nobody
about
would
the
do
Unity
that.
5? Yeah, no, nobody would ever do anything like that. Do you guys see the Unity 5 conversation that they've had?
No, I didn't
No,
actually.
so Unity 5 is the actual engine that they're going to be using, and they actually sat there and talked about all of the merits and why they decided to go with that particular engine. Just the capabilities. There's a couple little add-ons that will help streamline the work that they're going to do. So I mean, I'm hoping that they can get something out there and they'll be able to communicate with the community. Hey, we need you guys to start testing these certain elements, and then over the next year, start fleshing out the actual server mechanics, rule sets, some of the start tweaking and adjusting the numbers of what's valuable and what's less valuable.
Yeah, getting the features in first and then messing with it. Go for it, Phantom X.
I just say I really hope Voxel Farm shines through. Miguel's an awesome dude. So, but
Yeah.
you one thing I didn't mention in my question that you singled out because it was in my head, but I didn't want to say it was the PvP crowd being a little bit different from the PvE crowd, and how that goes forward. I have to say though, we do have this. Well, how long now? How long has Landmark been around? A while, right? So we have sort of this experience. I almost feel like it's a repeat, like the excitement, and then we're going to see how it follows, because now Landmark doesn't even really going to have their own forums. They are moving everything out to Reddit. It's just interesting, the evolution, but I don't know.
Yeah, I did not follow Landmark as closely as I probably should have. The technology that they were pioneering was always really impressive, and moving everything over to Reddit's an interesting approach. I know there's some communities. One of the websites that we use for a lot of our project planning is a website called Slack, which it is completely different than anything I've ever seen. So check it out if you want. But going back to the voxel topic, they've talked about voxels, and what they want to see happen is the walls falling down and damaging players, and being able to dig under walls. If you're fortifying your walls, you want to you can fortify the walls underneath underground. They talked about finding the rune stones underground, or I think that it is going to be a big part. I don't know if it'll be anywhere near as sandbox as Landmark, or even Camelot Unchained seems to be taking a very big sandbox approach. However, I mean, if it's in there and it doesn't destroy the rest of the game, I mean, why not allow people to have fun with it?
Yeah, when they threw that in, that came out of nowhere. Like, I saw that announcement, my jaw kind of dropped, because really our only experience with Voxel Farm to that point had been Landmark, and it's like, that's brilliant. I mean, in a PvP setting, based off of what Miguel shows us that he can do, it's what I'll be curious about is what exactly they license from him, because, well, again, Landmark, they do not license everything from him, so I'm curious to see what parts and pieces get taken out. But anyways, back to the community stuff. One of the things that I'd started asking about beforehand is the idea also of, do you promote individual members of the community? It mentions Twitch streaming. Do they? Mm-hmm. What do you think? I mean, what do you guys think? Should a game company single out and promote individual streamers?
Yeah.
And if so, to what degree? Because again, we'll get to the Insider program, but I want to start off with that question. Kind of what your guys' thoughts are.
So what do you mean by promote?
I think
I want to hear some examples of promotion, though. What do you mean by promote? Give us an example.
singling out, maybe this is all just a theory in my head, but say, for example, they have a post somewhere in their forums, these are the Twitch followers you should watch, and singling out like 5 or 6 of the top streamers, even though there's maybe hundreds that are streaming. These are the ones you should watch, and they're the ones with the followers, the ones that have the most viewers. Do you think that's okay? Do you then in turn give those streamers benefits that you don't give up? That's sort of where I'm leading into, but just the premise in general. Should a company, is it smart to do that?
I think that it is. It can be smart, but it's dangerous. We can take as an example the wiki situation with Crowfall. Crowfall has been, obviously announced for a while now. A lot of players have gone through, and there's a lot of player-generated content already taking off. There's 3 or 4 different podcasts. There's a lot of fan sites, guild management websites, and stuff like that. But there were 2 or 3 different fan-made wikis, and Crowfall ended up partnering with the wiki that Curse is putting out there, and we don't know. Maybe there is some financial kickback on that, but
the Curse Wikipedia, I don't believe there's any kickback on that. We use that with My Dream, and I think it's just, hey, you want to host your wiki on our site? Great, we'll have it in our network of wikis, so you can potentially get some exposure from it. And they'll also help you out every now and then with like formatting things, like the I don't know if it's PHP or whatever that they use, but it's basically, I looked at it, it's like, nope, too confusing. Let's just send an email and have them do it.
I can see where there'd be a little bit of value there. Of it's a network, you might be able to get some crossover traffic, but there are better, in my opinion, better formatted, more fleshed out wikis, and they're player created. I mean, they're being ran by people interested in Crowfall. And when Artcraft went ahead and partnered up with Curse, I mean, that hurts on a personal level. It says all of the work that you've done, you've created a quote unquote better product, and that, you don't have that name recognition, so we're just not going to go with you. And that's the danger when you have a streamer who's wildly popular because they have a British accent, or they look like Kate Winslet. When you have somebody who has a big following, and they're the only ones who get any press. If you're small, or if you're trying to get started up and you're working hard, as hard or more, harder than any of the other people, or you have a better show, you just don't have the followers yet, and you don't get that kind of exposure. A lot of people get turned off to continuing their projects. They get turned off from a lot of that. And I reached out to the player driven wiki, and I know a lot of other people did as well, and encouraged him, because the guy who was heading that project up, he was like, why am I doing this if now I have to compete with a Crowfall sponsored wiki? Why am I even doing this? And we told him, it was like, look, it doesn't matter. Do the work that you're doing, and you do that, and as long as it's a better product, people will eventually come to it, and eventually you may get that kind of recognition. But anytime that Crowfall really starts, singling out people, they have to be really careful about it, because if you aren't fair, you could end up upsetting a good portion of your fan base. And as much as I would love Crowns and Crows to be the official podcast of Crowfall, it wouldn't be fair to the Golden Glory. It wouldn't be fair to Crowfall Radio. It wouldn't be fair to these other guys. And that's just a dangerous road to go down.
Well, here's a question: what happens when Zam spins up their Crowfall wiki and content and build statsturbation generator thing? Like, is that going to be yet a further kind of tangent for the community to either acknowledge or ignore, or is that almost more of a different, like a tool, versus the wiki is more like a encyclopedia, I guess?
Mm-hmm. It'll diversify the population for sure. But I mean, I just keep going back to what I told him and what I tell everyone. As long as you have a good product, I mean, that's what matters. And so it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter what Zen does. It doesn't matter what Curse does. It doesn't even matter what Crowfall does. If Crowfall put up a crappy forum that didn't have anything on it, and you couldn't put like what guild you were related to, and it was just super restrictive, people wouldn't use it. Yeah, and we've seen this historically. People would go to the best option, the best. If there's an alternative out there, excellent. And there's some websites out there that are trying to do that. And I know one of the guys on our podcast, Dragon, he just put out a brand new news site. Now, it's not the first news site for Crowfall. It's just the best. It's been well received. You can look at it's cf.gg. So CF short for Crowfall, but cf.gg. All right, good game. You could go with all of that. My phone's dying. You can look at it and you can say, oh, well, yeah, this is a beautiful website, and people will use it because it's beautiful.
Completely,
Yeah.
completely agree with you there. And I guess that's one of the other nice things about community is that people will be able to inform other people. Hey, this is the spot to go to for the the best information and stuff. Cattail, and that's that's I guess one of the nice things about having community is that people can inform each other of where the where the best information's at, where the best places to communicate with the developers and that sort of stuff. Because who knows, it might be the sort of thing that if the third-party wiki is throwing down the most information on the subject, especially when it's being a thing, and then it's a matter of like, having to sift through what's the actual stuff going in the next build, what's really there, and what's like, data mine information that we're going to theory craft on, but isn't actually going to be in. I mean, going all the way back even to one of 3DO's last games, Legends of Might and Magic, when we cracked into the files, we see, oh, it wasn't supposed to be just a crappy 8v8 Counter-Strike clone FPS fantasy game. It was supposed to be a full-on, like, story-based multiplayer version of the Might and Magic series. It just fizzled. So, that's one of the kind of funny things when data mining comes around. And I guess that's one of the considerations for a wiki is, do we allow data mine information? Does it have to be actually verified or checked in some way? Kind of an interesting sort of thing, honestly. And it's the sort of thing that no game can seem to get around. Every game, like, I think they had said EverQuest Next and H1Z1 were going to be impossible to data mine. And then there's people totally data mining and put the information up. It's like, you can't make it impossible to data mine. People will just crack it.
Well, it's especially not a good idea to throw out the challenge, because that's just gonna, especially for a PvP. I mean, I don't know why people try to challenge PvP players. That's the worst. Those people are gonna, do what they can to troll.
And again, the reason I bring up the idea of streaming is because we've sort of seen it with Landmark. And, one of the first streams that came up, or one of the first posts in the forums that came up when we found out there was no NDA was, immediately a post, who's streaming, when, how, alpha, beta 1, beta 2, where are you going to be? And that just brought this to mind is because obviously the key here is free advertisement, right? I mean, you're getting free promotion of your game, and you're not having to do anything for it. In fact, people are paying you to be into the alpha to promote your game. It's a win-win to a degree, but our experience with that has been insiders, which, through the EQ Nexus side, I was a part of that, and I wasn't streaming, but I was still a part of that program. And the way they sort of grasped community and streaming, it had a huge sort of, I think, opposite reaction, was my experience, for people who were not in the insider program, to a degree that they actually canceled the program. And I think that's why they canceled the program. That might not be why they say they did. But it was, I think initially was kind of well perceived, but then they started giving out, well, the streamers can give away these items, and it sort of went downhill from there.
I think it depends on what they're offering though, and how they're offering it, because part of that problem was that they were mostly focused on streamers, I think, or the perception was that they were mostly focused on streamers and didn't
which was not
promote.
true.
Yeah, but they didn't promote how they might have been helping, I don't know, forum people or whatever. People, what I saw a lot of is people in the forums saying that everything should be available either through the forums or through the game. Um, but when the thing that came to mind for me when you were talking about streamers, I like the idea that H1Z1 is doing with the what are they calling it? The white. What is it? The white
Whitelisting?
servers? Yeah, the whitelisting.
Oh,
of servers.
yeah. The ones where you have to get a special invitation to actually go in that server. I get you.
So you like
And
that idea.
I like that idea. If you've got enough followers to have your own server, that seems pretty cool to me.
So that is showing a sort of selection within the community, right?
I mean, if you've got a ton of followers and you can get people to, I don't know, if you have 100 followers and you can get hundreds of players to play on your server for, you know, week after week after week, that seems like a plus to me. I probably want to do that.
And I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying, looking at what we experienced with the Insider program, and I think the key there was not necessarily that they promoted streamers. That just makes sense. It's how they did it. When they started exclusively giving items, well, you have to watch someone play this game to get an item that you get to use within the game. That's where it became a problem. And
If you had to do that, because most of the streams that I watched, I didn't have to watch the whole stream.
so
No, there were definitely a lot of items that I had a hard time giving out.
I can tell you, people were pissed off enough. There was one, and now I've not visited the Landmark forums in forever because, well, we can talk about that later. They tend to get just as crazy as PvP forums. But anyways, there was somebody that got so upset about this, they actually did calculations of how much time I had to watch to get a certain token so that I could bet. It was crazy, and I think
But
that
you
was the
don't have to
problem.
bet.
Anyways.
That's the crazy. I didn't bet. I didn't bet on anything. I won a bunch of stuff. You
But
don't
that's
have to
not my
bet.
point.
But
My
it's the
point is
what
how.
I'm saying is it's the perception, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with what they're actually doing. Maybe if they're not involved in the promotion of what they're doing, the perception of what other people, what other players think is happening is probably trump, because some people don't have any information about what's actually happening. They just don't like the idea that there's not a focus on the forums. I hate Twitter. I hate Reddit. I hate streaming. I shouldn't have to do those things in order to participate.
So the bigger question, I guess, is not that, should they promote streamers, is just how. So you would have no problem, would everyone else have no real problem with, say, Crowfall had, we're going to allow you to run campaigns, we're only going to invite a certain streamer for this campaign. They can invite who they want in. Do you think, because the question becomes, it's free advertising, but does it in turn start to harm the community?
This is a side, and I'll definitely ask this later, but is stream sniping even going to be an issue in Crowfall as well? But let's keep on the question, and I'll bring that one up in a moment.
Will it harm the community? I would say that to do something like that would not harm the community. I think that, if you have, we'll say the goons, say they bring 2,000 people to this game, it's not unheard of, and they want to do their own campaign. Could you petition your own campaign that would not, contribute to any sort of rankings or standards? I mean, you start tiptoeing on some dangerous lines, because you start getting into collusion with other players, and you are able to pull resources out. If you had a campaign where there was no export at all, whatever you did in campaign was just in campaign, you just did it for fun, then yeah, I think that you could do that, and you could give a streamer a campaign to fill with whoever they wanted to fill, and let them run that for as long as they wanted to run that. I don't see any, that wouldn't hurt anybody, and it would give a lot of exposure. I hadn't even thought of, a situation like that occurring. But But if you started allowing that to take place on the actual competitive campaigns, you're going to start dealing with stagnation, the collusion that I was talking about, and that does affect the game overall because now people are having to compete against, people who benefited from those campaigns.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I can see how there's definitely it's a very fine line. It just definitely does have to be done in a particular way to make sure that it's not only a positive thing, but something, as you were kind of pointing out with the stagnation, something that's sustainable. That if it's a feature you're going to put in, it has to be implemented in such a way that you can keep on, using it, keep letting that wheel just keep on spinning, and people keep on using that same method, but doing it in a different way. I definitely do like that idea. Now, here's a question. Stream sniping. It's a PvP game, and that's definitely something that comes up. Whether it's somebody that's, specifically looking for you because they wounded you in the past minute and they want to track you down, or if it's something a little bit more intense than that they're actually, tuning into your communications, what you're talking about with your guild and stuff, and then, using that to plan like full-on ambushes and things where you're going to take significant advantage because, they gave that information up. Do you think that's going to be an issue with Crowfall, and do you think that would maybe make people a little bit hesitant to actually stream their gameplay?
Definitely, definitely. And one of the big reasons why is the fog of war. Whenever you log into a campaign, you only get to see what you can see on your map, and maybe what your guild sees, and or if you have a team or something along those. I'm not sure how they're going to handle that, but that's all that you get to see. So if you are able to follow people's streams, they're on the same campaign as you. Yeah, I mean that's going to be a big advantage because now you're going to be able to see, oh, that guy just found a resource point, mark the map, and then you go there. I could see that being a big issue. Now, maybe, as I said, if streamers, they could set up campaigns, there might not be a fog of war. That's one of the things that Artcraft has talked about, that they're very open to seeing what works and what do people want in campaigns, and so they can tweak the rule sets. And so, I mean, you can have a campaign that could start off with no fog of war, and everyone just logs in, everything's already on their map, and go have fun, guys. So I would see that it being a big problem. I know when I'm in a competitive PvP guild, and whenever we go into games like Arcade was the one that I played most recently, and people would constantly stream snipe because there would be packs involved, and you could make money off of it, and we would do it. And it's just one of those things. If you stream, you don't have a delay. That's what you're going to deal with. And it was fun because there was one guy who would stream daily, and we would be stream sniping each other, trying to figure out where we were at any given time, and it was just this little fun game of chess.
That's awesome. That's really,
and that's all he did. I mean, he was just he just streamed, and so he had his own little core team of 4 people, and they were just built to gank ships. And so it was fun. It was fun for us because we got to go out there with just our general builds and see how we could hold up.
That is one of the nice things I've seen about the game Arcade, is that it's really easy to, have a reason to attack somebody, and if you can stream snipe somebody or get some informational advantage, you can totally A, screw them over, and B, profit from it. So it isn't just like, haha, I've screwed up your plans and peed in your Cheerios. It's, I peed in your Cheerios, and I took your gold. And you're dead.
Wait till Crowfall.
Yes.
That's kind of the amazing thing I think about Twitch in general, is I think games are going to have to start thinking about how that fits in. And again, we've got a lot of these forum people who aren't paying attention to that at all. So people talk about wanting languages in games, and they still want that old EQ language filter where you can't understand people from other races. And it's like, well, if I'm playing Twitch, if I've got TeamSpeak, why is that language filter going to matter to me? I'm just going to be using Twitch and TeamSpeak and Skype to communicate anyway. That's not going to stop anything. And like you said, now there's Twitch sniping, so stream sniping. So all of those things eventually are going to have to be factored into how people are playing.
I mean, that's the thing. Don't just be sniping people on Twitch. Snipe people on Hitbox and all the other ones too. Like, might as well, if you're gonna do it, do it. Be a pro.
I have to say, I've never been much of a PvPer. And I've always done most PvE, and that's sort of been my wheelhouse. But I'm extremely excited for Crowfall. I don't know why. Again, I think it goes back to their Kickstarter promotion, how open and they've been, just all the information. I fell into that hole that they hopefully deliver from. I guess, since we are talking about communities, I'm not really in those. Valor, you clearly are a PvPer. I guess other games that are out there now, as far as their communities, Arcade, mentioned ArcAge. That community, good, not good? Did the company sort of embrace it? Did they?
Oh, they took a more or less a fairly hands-off approach to the community, and the community actually turned into an auction house. There wasn't people would be trying to bypass the tax that would take place on auctioned items in game. And so if you went to a server forums, you're going to see, 50% of all the threads, want to sell this, want to trade this, want to buy this. And so, in terms of what the community turned into, that's kind of what the community turned into. But, their communication with the community, they tried to be as communicative as they could be, but they were handcuffed by dealing with the company in Korea who was doing all of the actual design and implementation of what they asked for. And so, they really screwed themselves this past month because in an effort to bring back people who had quit, they offered up a gift pack that included an item that was currently being sold for about $100 in game. So, I mean, you can just imagine. I mean, you're just really setting yourself up for failure there because all of a sudden the community and the people who have been paying your bills are asking. It's like, hey, you're telling us that we have to spend $100 if we want to get whatever this item is, but the person who hasn't been paying you for the past 6 months, he gets it for free. These are the types of scenarios that arise when the communities or the community managers or the developers themselves lose touch with what's going on in the community. Because if they had simply put up a poll or maybe just had a little think tank take place one night and say, hey, what can we do to bring people back? They would have got a significantly better response than just throwing something against the wall to see if it sticks.
Comes down to those items. I'm telling you, insider program. I got that email. I did ArcAge alpha beta. I really did not do much after launch. I didn't realize that until after I deleted the email. I thought, damn, I should have just got back into the game and used that. So you think being hands off is not necessarily a good thing?
It's
for cultivating
the
community.
Yeah. I think that for an official forum, you can't be too hands off because the forums will become what the community needs them to be. And in a situation like ArcAge, or what could happen in Crowfall, is if they don't have a good enough system for listing items, then people will use your forums for that. And then if they're using your forums for that, what other conversations are going to take place? The official forums are where casual players will start. They will go to an official forum and say, oh, I bought the game. I really don't know anything about the community. What I want to do is I want to learn more. What's going on behind the scenes? What's going on? What are the guilds talking about? What are these communities talking about? And they go to the official forums. And if if they go to the official forums and all that's there is, trolling and, flaming and all that, it's going to be a big turnoff to a lot of people. I mean, you have to usually understand that, new gamers, new MMO players, typically don't understand that well enough yet. I don't know yet that they have that concept yet. And so, if you're too hands off, I mean, you run the risk of driving away people who don't want to have to deal with that. What I see is then there's an opportunity for player ran websites to handle a lot of this. And this would be a great opportunity for them to actually partner up with quality ran player websites and say, if you want to do out of game listing service, go to this auction house. It's fantastic. It's well ran, et cetera, and let them go with that. So but yeah, if you go too far hands off, you run the risk of the community really running themselves, and then there's no direction. And then anytime a dev shows up, it could turn into just a complete feeding frenzy. So, don't be too restrictive to a point where, the people who want to just get out there and, have fun on forums, don't be too restrictive to just drive them away. But at the same time, you can't let them just go run roughshod over everyone.
I heard that I was on Crowfall Reddit today, and I heard that there's about 10 people who are like hardcore Shadowbane guys, and they're kind of running the forums. That they want Crowfall to be just like Shadowbane or as hardcore as Shadowbane.
Yeah, there's some subsets that have showed up on the forums from Shadowbane, from Darkfall. Darkfall is another big one. I played a lot of Darkfall, and so they've shown up and they've talked about, all of the people who aren't from either of these two games are complete garbage, and it's a small number of people. And it's not been to a point of real contention to have any sort of action taken. But I think this is what you're asking about, was these players from these games who show up and say, "Oh, we're Shadowbane, we're so much better than you guys," or "We're from Darkfall, we're so much better than you guys. You don't know anything about gaming, blah blah blah." So with them, you're going to have those small subsets. Any game is going to have them. When they attempt to take elements from past games, because that's one of the big reasons all the Shadowbane players game is, Crowfall is somewhat the evolution of Shadowbane. Camelot Unchained is somewhat the evolution of Dark Age of Camelot, and to some extent, Shroud of the Avatar is an evolution of UO. So
not so much that one.
It's that is what it's supposed to be. I won't touch on that.
Yeah, let's just leave that.
Lots of respect for some of the guys working on it.
Got my little Shroud of the Avatar token. If I ever catch Richard Garriott without his and I have mine, he owes me a drink. But chances are it'll be the other way around, and I'll owe him a drink, and that's fine. I'll buy him a drink. That's no biggie. So, anything else you guys want to talk about? Otherwise, we actually have a few questions here. I guess
We have a few. We gotta start there already.
there is one thing that I wanted to kind of bring up, and I brought it up before we started the show here, and it was the approach that Dust Hall is taking with engaging the community. They don't necessarily let everybody in. We kind of got some special access because we kind of know some of the people there or something. So I actually joined in the little test that they had last weekend. I think it was only a 12-hour test, and during the test they had 2 or 3 different groups, clans, guilds, whatever they were, from various games that came through and joined up. And they actually put up a significant fight and actually, played through the mechanics of the game and, kind of made a case for some of the methods for how things should work, or what works better, what works worse. And one of the nice things for me is, since they actually had a TeamSpeak server hosted, they had one of those groups in one of the TeamSpeak channels, one of the guilds that was playing, but they actually had a channel that was mostly the devs, and you could actually join. It wasn't initially their plan, but you could actually join with the devs and kind of join their little party and guild and go smash around with the other people, and it was a lot of fun. It was great that they not only engaged the larger communities that they're in contact with and that showed interest in the game, but also that they, took on, I guess technically were more media press oriented, but in inviting some other people in the game to get some other opinions and more feedback about the game. And that was the nice thing, is because I was in the channel with the developers, I would give them feedback. They'd ask about it. I'd give them my details, and it sounds like they were really doing a good job of taking note of that stuff. So it was definitely a great experience. Do you feel like that's the sort of thing that would be possible for Crowfall? Is the thing that they would be ready to do? Or even let's take a step back from that. Is it the sort of thing that most PvP centric multiplayer and MMO games could and should be doing, or is it one of those things that it could work and it can completely backfire depending on the game?
I think it could completely backfire depending on the game. I think we're talking about different styles of game and different population sizes, and so there's too many different ways that you can go about it. But I think each game will need to take a unique approach and figure out who their community is. Some games have a high streamer population just because it's easy to stream. You don't have to worry about stream sniping as much. It's an entertaining game. Arcade was boring to stream because you'd hop on a boat and you'd just sail around for 10, 15 minutes, and you wouldn't do anything because there's nothing to do until you happened upon somebody. I think that's just one of those things. Every game's going to have to do it differently.
I completely get you.
But it seems to me like that's something that, if we're talking about community, you want to find a way to do that. Go in and spend time with the devs. Who doesn't want to spend time in-game with devs? There's got to be some way to do that, even if it's just one campaign world and during early alpha or whatever. And I think that's one of the things that actually, now that you mention it, is missing from Landmark at the moment, because people used to jump into Omid's weekend streams. People used to jump into Dave's streams when he'd be in game. People would jump in if Felgon was in game. And that's something that we don't have anymore. And that's something that people who aren't even building would love to do. I don't know that you necessarily even have to go in and PvP, even if it is a PvP centric game. People like hanging out with devs.
It's true. I think that there's a big drawing there. I know our podcast, we got, I want to say, about 450, 500 viewers, and it was for the dev interview. And people just really they enjoy feeling that kind of experience of getting to interact with somebody who has a significant impact on the game. Maybe they'll get their voice heard on a particular subject that's important to them. So yeah, to some extent I think so. But these people, I say these people, these dev people, they also do have a job and they have lives, and while they are putting in an intense amount of work on this game, and the amount of time put into that is taking away from their families. It's taking away from a lot of these things, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of the the alphas take place during work hours, and a lot of people I complain. A lot of people complain about that is because the devs they have a job, and their job's effectively 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever, and so
Not
how they balance that, I don't know.
It's not 9 to 5.
It is.
These guys, honestly, like right now, I can tell you, the Crowfall guys, there's probably somebody still at their office right now tonight, if not multiple people.
I'm sure. because it's
That's
not
the
9 to 5.
development process, though. Once the game launches live, that's when I think we're going to start seeing, folks starting to move into more set roles, and then people who want to get onto the next, big game are going to move on. I know Todd and Gordon, they want to create an amazing game, but just because it's an amazing game doesn't mean it's going to be the last game they ever make.
So maybe a better question. All of us have obviously played a lot of games, a lot of probably MMOs and various different types of games. What game had the best community throughout your entire history? What was the best community you've ever been a part of? Not why yet, but what?
The best community, I would have to say, was Darkfall. The Darkfall community.
For
I
me,
can explain why, but you said.
I want to see
what.
I'm curious to see what his other two say.
I'm gonna say actually Warframe, and part of that was that they fostered the community in a very good way, and they did a great job of supporting it.
And Nero goes
My
into the
favorite
why.
was Wizard 101.
It's a quick why.
Wizard 101. Well, that's the next question, and like Valor for you, why? Well, what was it about that? How did the company allow that community to be so good, or did they even do anything? And how can that be applied to now?
They didn't do much, which surprisingly turned out pretty well just because of the type of community it was. They did have a few basic forum rules, but the game actually took over part of the game. The forums we called Forum Fall, the game we called Darkfall, and they were one and the same. What took place on the forums was the political interaction. It was a lot of backstabbing. People would intentionally incite anger on the forums so that in game, they would come out and attack them and maybe put them at a weak position. It was beautiful. It was beautiful getting to watch that kind of player interaction and how it would affect and impact politics in game. And so they, as poorly polished as that game was, because I can tell you it was really bad. It was amazing what they ended up with such a bad product. And everyone who's played Darkfall, they'll tell you, it's a ton of fun. It was a horrible game, but it was a ton of fun.
And I'll change my answer real quick. It wasn't actually. It's more of a tie. FTL is the other community that I've seen that is super, super awesome, and it's been something that's been because the game's fun and because the people like it. That I think the community. It's not a multiplayer game. It's a solo procedural roguelike sort of thing. But if you go on their Reddit, it's probably one of the most positive and productive Reddit pages I have ever seen in the history of using Reddit. I am not kidding. Those people love that game and they love talking about the game, and it's just awesome. I've always had good experiences there. I don't post there much, but it's nice to see what people post, and they get a lot of support for it. If it's something silly or some achievement that they did or a new ship they made or some fan art, it's all really good stuff, and people really are supportive over there. Now that's weird though, because it's a single player game and it's one of the most supportive communities I've ever seen, so I don't know if that speaks ill or otherwise of multiplayer and MMO stuff. I guess it's just not as competitive at that point, especially not competitive like a PvP game.
For me, anyone that knows me knows I've always been a huge EverQuest. That's just what I grew up on. That's what I have all my crap around my house from. That by far was the best community that I've been a part of. Like when I think of memories of playing with people and the stuff that I think about, it was EverQuest. The reason I bring this up is because then I ask myself, well, why was that? What did the developers have anything to do with that? There was no outreach. Sure, there were the guide program, GM events, things that happened occasionally here and there. But there was not this direct access, and that's just the dichotomy to me. The interesting part of today to now versus then. You had a very good community then, without all of these sort of bells and whistles. Now you have direct interactions. You have all these other little things that are so at the ready, at the fingertips. Now that's I think partly evolution of social media, and it's just has to be there. But it's just an interesting viewpoint. I don't have necessarily an opinion on why or yes, no positives. It's just something that I notice now to then, and it's just an interesting change. And I do not think, no, people probably won't agree with me, but and maybe I've just not been in the right games. But up to this point, Landmark has had a very good small community. I still have never found a community nearly as good as the EverQuest one that I was in, and I don't know why. It might just be the games I've played, but they've never seemed as tight knit, no matter where I've been.
I'm
Do you
wondering
think
how
part of
the
that?
communities are cross pollinating, and I think that's happening through Twitch. It might end up happening through a combination of the social medias, but there seems to be a lot more cross pollination now.
But yeah, there's a huge variety, a lot of jumping around. I mean, people are going to go from one thing to the next, and
But
I don't know
we're
that that
staying
helps.
together as a community. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I feel like we're staying together as a community more than before, at least in my experience.
Maybe. Well, we did have several
We
questions.
do.
Diggs, were you following along these? Because we are going to try to actually end on time
Yeah.
this time.
So let me.
Yeah,
Let's start.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm managing the questions here, so I will handle it. I will just get it started here. The first couple are real easy ones to knock out because they're for me. I already answered it earlier. Whiteberry. It is Pantene Pro V.
For anyone that didn't know, what was that? The question of what conditioner do you use?
Yeah, and then Dragon 101 asks, "What the asterisk am I looking at on the left?" So, first monitor, front and center. Second monitor, way up on some other level of my desk on the left. So if I'm looking up over here, it's because I'm getting a better look at the people that I'm looking at on Skype rather than staring at the chat log, which is dead ahead. Why I've got it configured this way? I try to use an entire monitor for Skype so that way I've got the biggest windows possible for the cameras, so they look as good as they can. Because I know you love seeing our lovely guests like Valor here, and that lovely beard Phantom X got a compliment on earlier. So that's that for those questions. Fredolus asks us, do you consider yourself a leader in a gaming community, and has that impacted your enjoyment of the game itself? So, Valor, let's send that one over to you first.
That's a great question. I am one of the leaders of Lords of the Dead. Our rank structure is a GM, an AGM, and then our ruling council. And so I'm a member of that. I've been with LOTD for 9 years now, and I've led guilds in game, and I can tell you that from enjoying the game, the mechanics, the whatever progression there is, the PvP, yes, it does detract. Being a leader does detract from your enjoyment of the game. However, you get you open up a completely new arena that you can enjoy, and that is serving. You get to serve the members, you get to lead them, you get to accomplish great things through managing 50, 20, 50, 100 people. You get to build the relationships, the alliances. You get to handle a lot of the management, and while I'm not able to focus on being the elite pro PvPer that I used to be, I get to handle a lot of the other stuff that sometimes is tedious. There's been times where I've had to hang out on in a game late at night just because there was nobody else to kind of see what was going on and making sure we've got coverage. Sometimes it kind of feels like a job, but the payoff is just so immense that for people who are interested in it, once you get hooked, I mean, it's just one of those things you have to keep going back to.
Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I pulled a Tanlin. Everyone take a drink. I'm already out. So, sorry. But let me just start that back over. For me, it's been I've always been a leader or an officer of a guild within the first 1 to 3 months of joining it. So for me, it's always been a leadership sort of thing. And while I like being able to play the game, it came to a lot of times where I was the one managing the group. If it's a raiding guild and there's some amount of like drama going on or something, like who's the one who manages it? This guy. Even though, maybe I wasn't necessarily the leader, I was usually the moderator of the officers. So that did take a lot of the time in World of Warcraft, a lot of the time in Legends of Might and Magic, which I brought up earlier, a lot of time in a lot of games that I played. And I think it's something that I've recognized I just don't have the time for anymore. Even when I was just doing a whole lot of live streaming, I wasn't I wasn't doing like the officer stuff anymore just because I knew how much time it was going to take. And it's like, no, I unfortunately don't have the time for that. I'd love to help everybody, but I guess that's one of the other things is 10 years later, it's a more adult group, so there isn't nearly as much drama to manage whatsoever. That's one of the nice things when you've been with a group of people for a while, and I guess we kind of stopped recruiting for Raging Primates. So things kind of go how they are. Yes, happy little pixels. That's right, Jane Signal. So how about you guys, Diggs, Phantom X, leadership in games?
I'm too egalitarian to be a leader. I just like sharing information. So I'm usually known in a community that for games that I like, and I'm usually spitting out a ton of information. So I go through and find information, at least in certain categories, and make sure that everybody knows how to play and enjoys playing. But it does not detract from my enjoyment of the game. That's part of being social for me. And hopefully there'll be in-game parties and events that I would participate in. So that's all part of the enjoyment for me.
Diggs, I would gladly follow you as leader of a guild. That would be a very interesting time. For me, I've probably only had limited roles within guilds. I think probably within WoW. I mean, I was never a leader, but I was within the sort of higher structure of whatever you want to call it, underneath the leader, but managing other things. I wouldn't say it took away from the fun for me. I mean, if I never had fun playing a game, I just don't play it anymore. It definitely adds a different layer. It adds more to it, and I think for the right person, it can be fun. I think if you're a smart person, if it ever starts taking away from that fun, you just stop doing it because why are you playing?
Right, for sure. All right, next question. Let's see, I think that's how you clear it. There we go. So, Zek Saidu asks, if promoting streamers, generally speaking, is positive, would it be better to keep a running list of people who stream the game available on a forum/wiki than single out developer favorites? I think that'd be a good idea. I mean, I think one of the nice things is actually when people are able to set up a schedule of when they're streaming and have that be something that's promoted by the developers. So if it's a talk show or if it's like just a straight up like this is how you perform these techniques to like pwn everybody's faces, whatever the nature of the show is, having it on a schedule, keeping to that schedule and having that schedule listed so the developers can help facilitate the community to find the best content available, 24/7 or whenever it's around. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I love that idea. I think the devs helping to promote, and if more devs are doing streams themselves, rating is a great way to get lesser known people known. That's one of the things that I love about the community doing amongst themselves is, once they're done with their stream, trying to rate other people who are playing. And I even got, for Landmark, there was a night, I don't know, about 6 weeks ago that I was watching somebody's news stream, and they rated a new builder, and I learned some new building techniques, just from a guy who'd only been streaming for or even playing. He was only playing for 3 weeks. So community helping with that and devs helping with that is great.
One thing that I kind of liked, well, Landmark has all of their streamers on their front page, right? You start streaming, it automatically pops up there, which is kind of nondescript. You can do the same thing through Twitch, so it really doesn't matter. The one thing I did like about what the most active person, not there anymore, Omid, that I actually enjoyed with what he did, as far as not singling out one person and always going to that stream. He went into some of the big name streams, but he just was equally to tweet out, "Hey, I'm in, Mr. No Name stream watching Landmark. Come join me." And their ability to sort of direct to everyone, I like that. That's, I think, a better way to go.
Yeah, I've got no problem with them having some sort of library or schedule. It never hurts, maybe create a Crowfall channel and let people stream to it. In terms of Crowfall or whatever game they might be in. So, yeah, there's a way to go about that.
Not sure. Does that mean as the game changes, or?
So the question here is from Graxton. Everybody, it's how should community support change for a pre-launch game like a Kickstarter sort of thing? We're not 100% sure of the what exactly you're asking. If you want to clarify, but I'm guessing what you're saying is what happens when you stray from what's offered in the Kickstarter, what the Kickstarter presents, versus what's done later on with the game, or what exactly are you talking about? I'm not 100% sure. And you guys aren't going to hear me muted either. I'm just muting so people on the other end don't hear my mic hum or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering what kind of support is offered. I think we talked earlier in this episode about how community, not the community, but the devs' participation kind of was upscaled in the beginning and starts getting scaled back as they start working more on the game. And, after you've revealed so much, I mean, new information, what new information is available to share? So I think going from Kickstarter down, or past Kickstarter, in some ways, the closer you get to beta, the more in-game you get, the less new information is available. But I'm hoping that we get things, or we can continue to get things like weekly updates. I like.
Yeah. Well, and I think we talked about this some. I think we talked about how. During the Kickstarter, there's going to be a massive dump of information. They're trying to get people interested, excited, get the money, and then now it's just going to be a progression. And it's going to be as things advance and they can talk about them, they'll talk about them. But it'll definitely be a smaller stream as opposed to the floodgates that were open earlier.
I really love. I just wanted to say real quick because I really love how Revival has their weekly blog that gives us information about what features they're working on in the game. Tells us a little bit about what they're hoping to do the next couple of weeks, and also gives us a little head start or glimpse into what the next topic is going to be for the next week. And that's what I would hope that Crowfall continues to do, at least give us a weekly update of what stuff they're working on, or at the very least monthly. But those weekly, monthly, producers letters or whatever is nice.
Yeah, the question of pre-launch versus post, I think that they have to support and build and grow and get that community to expand as big as it can be. Dave often talks about, I think he refers to it as critical mass. When you go live, you need critical mass at that point. If you don't reach that, your game will not necessarily be very successful. And there's been other articles. I wish Saul was here because I think he's the one that linked this at some point in the past that talked about, it's very clear the data shows your success really depends on how many do you have day one in that game. The more people you have day one, the more you're going to have at day 60. So in this day and age where there's a lot of pre-game hype, they're getting there's a reason for that. You want that critical mass to be reached, and part of that is growing that community beforehand. I think that's just something they have to do. Keeping in mind, I'm not necessarily talking about early access here either. That's sort of a different thing. But just growing and fostering the community pre-release, I think that just has to be done. They need to support that like they are. That's where I think Crowfall's been masterful. They've done an amazing job of sort of building everything up, the hype, the community. Hopefully it continues. It'll need to continue up until their release point. At least that's what the data shows that's out there. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game that's going to be really easy to get press coverage for, getting all the major game networks to cover it and, try to do what they can to get in and try it as early as possible.
They've been brilliant. I mean, think back even pre-Kickstarter. They did this like huge countdown on their website that everyone was watching. What's the countdown? What's going to happen? What's the news? Turns out, really, it was just to announce a Kickstarter. Yet, a countdown to announce a Kickstarter generated all this hype even before the Kickstarter existed. They've been really smart in how they've built their community. That's just been really pretty brilliant. So
I wonder if they were expecting people to be like, "Whoa, it's a Kickstarter! Yeah, party!"
But that's exactly what people did.
Yeah, they did.
It sounds silly, but that's what happened. I did it. I'm not going to lie. I saw that.
That was a fun Kickstarter to follow, and I hate the game. So I'm probably not going to play. It did not entice me to spend any money on it, but it was great information to watch. I don't think I've watched any other Kickstarter that closely.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, moving to the next question here. We got about 12 minutes left. Whiteberry Greenhill is asking us, and I'm not muted this time, as a novice in watching streams, I'm curious if others feel the same way in that streamers, especially if they have a large following, also go a bit diva, feeling they're entitled to special treatment from game devs because they promote the game. Perhaps that's more than other social media personalities. I would say there is an extent to that, but I could say in some ways it's also very much justified. If you're going to have, if your game is the game that Yogscast finally settles on to do their adventures and everything, you're going to want to do what you can to promote the hell out of them, because they have a huge following and they're going to keep making content for you and keeping, even if the game stops being interesting, they're going to keep making it interesting. The coalition coming through, I mean, that's a gigantic group. And, the short time that they played in Landmark, they made some awesome stuff. They made some amazing stuff with the tools that were really, really, raw at the time. So there is definitely a positive, beneficial point to bringing in people to play a game and supporting them so that way, making them feel entitled even, so that way they will continue supporting your game and giving you, constant coverage and constant content creation for your game. Because it's not like, people are necessarily being paid to promote the game. If they like your game and they're doing streams of, I don't know that you're necessarily, cutting them checks for it, or if it's kind of a mutual thing. It's like, you guys can make your monetized content using our game. That's totally awesome. It's free advertising for us, and it's a content creation platform for you. So it's a weird sort of thing, and coming from the I've been kind of doing more of the management of like marketing, PR sort of stuff, at least on some scale, at my dream. This has kind of been actually a big concern, is the idea of like, do we want to bring people in and make them feel entitled and all of that stuff, only to have them, crap on the game because it's actually not ready yet. So there's always definitely a risk with doing it. If you try to get somebody involved and they don't like the game, it's going to be very apparent, and it could end up, backfiring for you. So it's a tricky sort of thing. I've said a lot on the subject. Anybody else? What are your thoughts, guys?
Interesting to me is it's the people like Ko who have thousands of followers. Those tend not to be the divas. The divas that I see have less than 100. Um, um, and I think those people are rare. The ones that probably should legitimately be divas because they've got the clout and they're well known. Um, they've figured out how to have those followers because they have such a positive personality in the first place, and it's just fun to hang out with them. They don't have to try and be divas. But there are some people who aren't all that, who think just because they're streaming, people.
But I think the community at large sees that, though, right? I mean, nobody's fooled. I'm not going to mention names. I do know a few people that we talked about that we've seen when they don't like something, will go into a dev stream or something like that and try to pull their viewers with them and force change in a sort of not wholesome way during what should be a fun stream with a lot of sort of negative comments. But I think that's rare, and I don't think that the community is blind to that. I mean, you see that, you realize what's happening. In that regard, I think the community kind of polices itself. If you're going to watch a diva, maybe that means because you like being a diva. If you don't like that, I mean, seriously, if you don't want to be around, for lack of a better word, if you don't want to be around a douchebag, you're not going to. So I don't think it's as big of a problem. People make noise, but it's very simple to ignore the irrelevant noise. So, Ballard, did you?
I mean, you guys really covered it. If it's not something you enjoy, then just don't watch. It's it's that easy.
That's my argument all the time. I see all these Twitter fights, and it's like, if you don't like it, just turn off Twitter. Don't respond. Don't watch. Don't listen.
Yeah.
One little tangent I want to make real quick, though, is that one of the things that I keep saying is in the forums is how people want this return to community, and in the sense of responsibility, and you knew who these people were, and you could take sanctions against the trolls, and you had all this power to do all this stuff because you knew who people were. And I think social media just makes that even easier because, if somebody trolls me through Twitch or Twitter, devs are going to know about it. I think it's so much easier to control how people are acting through the game because we know each other now. And it's usually not just based on, your one character in game. It's cross games, actually.
All right, so we got a couple more questions real quick before we wrap up. And I mean real quick as in I'm going to go into them, and then we're just going to be probably looking to wrap it up. So Dorkish asks, so what's your take with Daybreak going all DLC on their community? EverQuest 1, EverQuest 2, and DCUO have always had paid expansions. That has not changed. They've always gone DLC. But keep in mind, they stopped being subscription-based and started being free-to-play. Free-to-play without DLC and without other, purchasables. The funds kind of run out real quickly. So they've got a business model and they've been executing on it. That's what it is. So that's Anybody else on that one? Otherwise, we're moving on. All right. All right. And the last one here from Jane Signal. We got one more from Dragon there, but we're not going to be able to get to it, unfortunately. Jane Signal asks, what communities will pour into the newly announced revival? What kind of community will it have? It has high hopes for really immersive RP, so curious what you think. That is an awesome question, and I definitely want to see you ask that on the Revival Cast show on Sunday, which is, 3 p.m. Pacific when it comes on? Is it 3 p.m.
It's
or 1 p.m.? 1 p.m. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, folks, that's definitely the time to tune in. If you've got questions about Revival, that's where our most adept Revival people are at to be able to talk about the show, or talk about the game rather on the show. And speaking of talking about the show, it's about time that we actually start wrapping up here. So I'm gonna give everybody time to go ahead.
I'll just say, yeah, but Valor, when can we find you? Where can we find you again?
Yeah, guys, if you guys are looking to know a little bit more about Crowfall, you can follow me on Twitter, Born in Valor, all one word, obviously. And then lotd.org is the best gaming community in the world. Throw that little shout out. And then, we do our podcast every Tuesday night, 8:30 Eastern. And you can find us twitch.tv/Crowns and Crows. And then it ends up on YouTube. Should be also just search Crowns and Crows. We're there.
All right. Anybody else?
Totally awesome. I think everybody else knows more or less who we are, where we're at. But I guess some final thoughts here. I definitely really appreciate having you on here, Valor. It's definitely been a lot of fun watching the Crowns and Crows show.
Thank you. Yes.
It's really nice. I guess one of the things is that we like being able to talk about the game somewhere other than during the Theory Forge podcast. So it's nice to be able to see somebody else's show and be able to talk about it and give you guys comments and questions and stuff, and based on your knowledge and understanding, because we've all read a lot about the game and understand a lot about it, but we all come from different points and different perspectives, and even within our own groups have different kind of points and perspectives and such. So it's really, for me, a relieving thing to know that a lot of things were on the same wavelength, but there's a lot of things that we don't necessarily think about that you guys talk about, or likewise stuff that you guys don't necessarily bring up all the time that we've talked about here and there. So it's a really nice sort of thing. It definitely kind of spreads it out a bit and gives the community more opportunities to learn about the game.
I think that having us all here is fantastic. The more the merrier.
All right. Before we wrap up, next week we will have at least one person from Pantheon joining us. Possibly Brad McQuaid, working on that, we'll see. But I just want to let you guys know ahead of time. Diggs, did you have anything, or are we just saying goodbye?
We can just say goodbye.
All right. Once again, Valor, thank you very much for joining us. Great time. And everyone else,
thanks
guys. For watching
Appreciate
us.
Yep. That is it. See y'all later. Pizza time!
Pizza time!